Good evening. My name is Lisa Sugimoto, and I am a Vice President with PPL Consultants, working with Saracoso Community College in their search for their next president. I wish to thank the audience for your participation in today's forums. As we complete each forum, you are asked to go to the Saracoso website and click on Presidential Search to provide your feedback on the candidates. Tonight's forums will be 50 minutes in length. There will be 2 introductory questions, followed by questions that have been submitted by the community. And to conclude, the candidates will spend the final 5 minutes providing a closing statement. Now, I am pleased to introduce Ms. Andrea Alexander as one of the finalists for the Saracoso president's position. So let me begin with the first question, Andrea, and thank you for being with us also. Given the qualifications and characteristics we seek in our next president, as well as institutional strengths and challenges we face, would you please briefly describe your background and how that suggests propensity for success in this critical leadership position?
Thank you so much, Lisa, for the question. I'd be happy to. So a little bit about me is that I was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, the Midwest. As a high school student, I was a part of a dual enrollment program at our community or within our community college system there in Chicago. After graduating from undergrad, I worked in non-for-profit and then later in corporate America before deciding on a career in higher education, where I felt a pull of my passion, given that I was an alumni mentor to several students at my alma mater at the time. And I've been in higher education directly a little bit over 12 years, and I've worked in both private and public higher education, and of course in community colleges, both in Chicago and now here in California. I currently hold a position within higher education, or I've held positions within higher education all the way from a coordinator to a director. And right now I'm a vice president of administrative services at Evergreen Valley College, in which I oversee the college operations and finance, which directly allows me to have links to instruction and student services, as well as our bond program. So my background has allowed me to have several experiences around several industries and how those industries actually feed into the community college setting. Moreover, because I was an active leader within the college setting during the financial crisis of 2006, a large part due to what happened or the events of 9/11, which caused at the time, the community colleges or the colleges to really strengthen organizational effectiveness. So I understood the need for that. From there, in the early 2010s, we saw people going back to college, and so this flow of needing to change the educational landscape again, that allowed for there to be more community development so that there was a pipeline for workforce employment for students of various ages. I went through that to the mid-2010s, in which we saw more of an equity, social justice sort of notion come into play. And it was the changing landscape of education again, in which achievement gaps were no longer about providing just education within the classroom, but extended to how we developed environments within the college setting and campus norms to deal with civil unrest, to the current situation, again with civil unrest, when it comes to notions of equity, and now, of course, the COVID pandemic, and how the need for professional development and equity training has risen to the top of the college agenda again. So all of these national crises or events that I've been affected by within my particular tenure within higher education, and how we had to deliver education in the changing landscapes of all of these things, in which I use skills that I learned from my non-for-profit work, to my financial strategy that I use from corporate America, to just planning and shared governance skills I developed within higher education, really allowed me to develop understanding of how to navigate that and how to lead an organization through all of these crises and all these the changing landscape of higher education, using, of course, my transformational leadership skills. How these skills and background relate to the success of the college based on the strengths and weaknesses of the college, I would say, is that we need to develop an understanding of 5 major pillars that I see that the college needs right now. And that is based on your strategic plan and other things like your educational plan that I've looked at. 1 would be the strengthening of the organizational effectiveness. 2, improve the community relations and workforce pathways to create pipelines based on the industry growth in the area, especially now that it's going to change now due to COVID, improve the pipeline and relationships with our K through 12 partners and potential partners, because as we have seen, there will be a large impact to the K through 12 community as a result of this COVID. McKinsey has already brought out a major finding which said that there will be a changing in the educational landscape and the nation's economic trajectory over the next 25 years as a result of students just indeed having to actually shelter in place and be online. We still have to narrow equity gaps and of course professional development. So my understanding of these 5 objectives or pillars under which I really think the college needs to have to succeed is what I bring. And the background that I have from non-for-profit, corporate America, and working in both private, public, and community colleges allows me to understand how to successfully lead a college through these things as we go through a very vast changing landscape in education over the next 18 years. And I believe this demonstrates my propensity for success as the next college president. I'm sorry, Lisa, you're muted.
I knew I was going to do that. I've got to remind myself. After your first 6 months in this position, what criteria would you use to evaluate your effectiveness as our new president?
So for me, because I am big into assessment tools and really understanding both the qualitative and quantitative measures and actions, I would really want to have an implementation fidelity matrix. And basically, did I do what I said I would do those first 6 months? And so for me, it's breaking it down into the 3 things that I really want to accomplish, and therefore be effectively evaluated in the criteria under which I would evaluate myself and ask others to, and that would be professional development. And basically, did I do what I said I would do for professional development, at least those first 6 months, when it comes to safety training, when it comes to effectively understanding, did we deliver online education, although the college itself already has vastly been doing it since 1988, but it is now even more so than ever. So have we effectively delivered the online education to both include instruction and the services? And have we been intentional about the diversity, equity training that we as a nation now need to implement? And now, especially with the changing trajectory of how this COVID will affect indeed our students from all demographic areas and all areas of marginality, from ageism to ableism. I want to be able to effectively evaluate how did people actually attend these professional development particular trainings. And as a result, what is there? I want to conduct an evaluation survey from the campus at large, which is a vast area, the largest geographical area here in California that this particular college services. So I want to be able to understand, did I indeed, or did this professional development indeed help, and how effective it was for the college. Another one I would love to, the criteria into which I would evaluate myself and ask others, is my fiduciary knowledge. Given that, or did I do what I said I was going to do? So did we indeed do an audit of the financial findings to understand, are we aligning our changing operational needs with what we have in our budget, and how do we shift that where it needs to be shifted or reallocated for what we know to be the changing trajectory of education? And then also, did we look, if we did have a shortfall, or if we do have a shortfall, which, you know, it's in some of the findings of the budget that I've seen online and different public documents, but did we look for opportunities, or did I look for opportunities to get us in the black? And by how much did I do that? So these are the things I want to effectively look at, and I want criteria, or I want to be judged, and based on it, how I would judge myself. And then the final one I would say is idea of measuring my connectiveness to people. Because it's such a vast area that we're covering geographically, I really want to make sure that I have multiple touch and checkpoints. And by that, I mean frequency and quality of those touch points, in which I talk to all people on all levels of the organization. So each week, that I adhere to a schedule that includes touch points and meetings with diverse stakeholders, to include constituency groups, or all constituency groups, and even the community at large. And this allows me to give feedback at various points throughout that 6 months to understand where we need to go, and also helps me communicate the vision I would have for the college. So that when I create a plan at the end of that 6 months, it's based on feedback that I have gotten from multiple constituency groups. So the deliverable will be that I am actually bringing out a plan in which I got feedback from everyone, and so that we are understanding where we're going as a collective college with me guiding that. So those are the criteria under which I would want to, of course, judge myself, be evaluated myself, and have others evaluate me, because those are the three things I think that are crucial, especially during this transition. I think you're on mute again, Lisa. Sorry.
I was looking at making sure I gave you your time too. So you now, because of your timing, we were allotting 35 minutes for the questions and 5 minutes for conclusion, but you had 2 minutes left. So we will give you those additional 2 minutes. And Andrea, please describe the style of leadership you seek to practice. From your experience, provide an example that successfully used that style as you engaged with your colleagues to get something done.
Sure. So I would say that my style of leadership really goes into what is considered transformational leadership, using collaborative leadership as well. And by transformational, that basically is the ability to get and solicit ideas from other people, set a course, and do that based on the ability to transcend the organization to new goals. So in that, you become more of a leader coach, meaning that the people on the ground are actually doing the work, and you're getting ideas and soliciting their feedback from that, and you're coaching them up so that their self-efficacy actually propels and is actually increased. And in that, the work itself actually, and the work we do to our students drastically increases, and just the overall quality of it is. That's the kind of leader I am. One that gives a lot of feedback, one who collaborates with a lot of people, and one who wants to build the self-efficacy of all of those around me. An example of that transformational leadership, I would say, would be in what is the specific community college I'm in right now, the Evergreen Community College, when we had to come up with a new resource allocation model. And it was a very tedious sort of thing. As we all know, those who've been a part of something like that, it can take years to develop when you're trying to change the landscape of how you allocate funds, especially at a multi-college district, which has sometimes two different or several different ideas of where to grow and things that they are specifically good at. But you have to come together and figure out in a consensus sort of way, using constituency groups who also have their own sort of ideas of where they want to take things individually for their particular group versus the college, and meshing and integrating all of those things in. So for me, an example would be that we spent 1.5 to 2 years on that. And unfortunately, we've had a lot of college turnover at my particular college. So I was the only one who sat on it those full 2 years. And I was happy to say we were able to deliver a resource allocation model that favored my college, not because my college was just favorable, but because I was able to show data, and I was able to take those newer people who came on and off of the committee and coach them up to help them understand where they needed to present data and how they needed to present their story of how these effective changes were good for their area. So I didn't do it for them, but I coached them up and gave them the information to bring forth to the committee so that more or various voices were heard. And so I was very proud of that, because I was able to collaborate with the other college and the district, and then at the same time be transformational in how we delivered our story, not just based on intrinsic knowledge or what we felt, but actually data-driven decisions that definitely inform where we wanted to go. And so I was very proud of that, and I'm still very proud of that.
Very good, Andrea. Let me let the audience know also that we received a number of questions. And so we attempted to combine some of them so that some of the questions were very similar, but we wanted to make sure that we got to as much of the information as was desired by the community, but wanted to make sure too that we weren't overlapping in ways that we were asking the same question. So you may not hear necessarily your question, but it's probably combined or at least maybe morphed into another question. So I don't want you to feel that we've totally ignored any of the questions that were submitted. Second question, Andrea. Our college has a richly diverse body of students, including a large incarcerated student population, traditional and as well as online students, and a growing dual enrolled high school population. Later questions will address some of those segments specifically. The key question here is how you address some of those segments specifically. The key question here is, how do you plan to unite Saracoso Community College around a shared vision for student success and equitably allocate funding to prioritize and respect the needs of our communities?
Certainly. So it kind of leads to what I was saying a little earlier in being a collaborative leader. So for me, with the diversity that is just vast within the college itself, because of your geographic area, because you serve incarcerated students, because you have dual enrollment and a large online distance ed program already, I do believe, and in addition to traditional commuter students, it is very, very, very diverse. And for me, part of that is being able to, again, get to those touch points. At the end of the day, I like to hear what people have to say about their vision, about where they feel that there have been gaps and where there have been great opportunities that we have taken. In addition to that, I would want to look at the data to say, where have we been in the strategic plan in the past? What were some of the actions we did to move that forward? Did they work? Did they not? So I would want to use both, again, qualitative and quantitative data to really understand that. And I would want to have these touch points and sit down and talk to students, talk to staff, and understand exactly, because I am a Socratic method thinker, understand exactly where those holes and gaps are. At the end of the day, people have been in the college environment or this particular college environment for a long time, and they've seen things come and go. But at the same time, they have a lot of knowledge that you will only get through going through the culture and learning the culture, understanding how to maneuver it, understanding the touch points and things that will allow certain needles to move forward and those things that just won't. So for me, with dealing with a diverse population, I'd like to get all of the information. I'd like to sit down with everyone I can to understand what is needed or what has been lacking. And through that, and through my know-how of understanding how to facilitate conversations, how to facilitate town halls, how to facilitate smaller group sessions, I can understand exactly how to link and integrate all of these things, because that's a large amount of students and a large, vast majority of diversity to do it. But the only way to do it is to go to each one and figure out what it is that they feel that they're lacking or the opportunities for growth. And so I plan to do that with different touch points. And from that, look at also some of the things we've already done from an HR standpoint when it comes to inclusion and diversity of getting student ideas and staff ideas about how we've implemented that. So I want to look at all of those things to eventually come up with a plan that actually addresses all of those needs so that I understand how to move the college forward. But again, I'm a collaborative thinker and a collaborative leader. So my thing is always to gather information from the sources. And from that, I can make a collective decision as opposed to coming in with my idea of what we should do or what has worked for me in the past, because that's just not the kind of leader I am or will be. I'm a collaborative one and want the know-how of the people on the ground.
Okay. How would you address developing a culture of community with our faculty, staff, and of course our students?
Well, that's an interesting question. Because in and of itself, the college itself and the landscape is a community. And so when I see that, when I say, when the question is posed to me, how do we foster a community? We are already a community simply just by the fact that we have this geographic and we have location, and because we are all part of the same umbrella. So when I think community, I think, how do we actually touch, taste and smell each other? How do we go about making sure that everyone feels included and is a part of the decision making, and at the same time, they don't feel like their voice or they're always having to compromise. So for me, building a community with these particular constituency groups and different people is basically being boots on the ground. I don't want to be a president who sits in the office all day and makes sort of decisions on a phone or on a computer, but actually gets out there and has these particular events. Because at the end of the day, we are a college. A college is a very social place. It is not a transactional place where I give you money and you give me product. We are all in this because we want a sense of community and we like the social cultural aspect of that. So my job is to do that, is to provide those events, is to provide those know-hows, from the town halls to the social events, to actually touch points of meeting, to build community, and then create activities and bring in actual, I should say, moderators to actually help us facilitate that. All of those things are tried and true things that we have to do to build this sense of community, because then I'd have to identify when I got there why this is even a question right now and what it is that makes it so that people don't feel a sense of community, to understand where to take it. But those are the things that I would do immediately to try to make myself known to the community so that they can then talk to me, so that I can see where those gaps are, or even just those gaps in the geographic area in and of itself, because again, it's vast, that's a lot of diversity. So that's what I would really want to see and use those particular social cultural events to understand what it takes to build a more collective community.
Andrea, what is your experience with classified staff representation and involvement in a college governance process?
My experience with that, I have to say, is vast, because I'm over the bond program at my current college, and because I'm over operational and fiscal responsibilities. Every single committee has to have constituency group representation, specifically our classified. Our classified Senate, which just came back online over the last year. It was something we didn't have for a little over 5 years. I was a big proponent of it. I've been very much in support of it, because it was a deadening voice that wasn't there. So for me, everything that I go to do, from every building I've ever designed, to every project we've looked at, to the resource allocation model, to the model of how we allocate funds when we have additional funds from the state, from everything from our guided pathways model, from our vision for success that I've co-chaired, all of those things have always had constituency groups specifically classified. So my knowledge with working with them is vast, because everything we do, we have that shared governance within the community college I am at currently. And then when I was in Chicago, the same thing, from AFT, the academic senate, the classified senate, and even what we call the managers, supervisors, and classifieds. Every decision we make in every committee that I run and that I'm on has that, and I'm very familiar with working with that every step of the way.
Very good. Communication is an ongoing challenge for Saracosa Community College. What would be your strategy to increase or enhance the quality of our communication?
I'm a big proponent. I truly believe that the leader sort of sets that tone, and people subsequently follow that. So if the communication that I give and the communication that I present, whether that be in written form, email form, or just how I go about the college campus, even online and so forth and so on, will be mirrored by others. So for me, a big part of communication is understanding that it's on the part of the communicator to make sure their message is communicated. That doesn't mean people have to agree with your communication, and they don't even have to agree with necessarily your opinions of it. But it's important or vital that people at least are able to understand your communication. And a large part of that is that a lot of people don't understand people's communication sometimes, because personal issues or personal biases come into, or personal relationships we've had in which we didn't like the way someone did or said something in the past. Therefore, going forward, we never can really fully get over that and get past that we didn't like what they did in the past. Therefore, every communication or interaction we have with them is tainted with that lens of what happened that we didn't like. So a big part of that is my ability to help the executive team understand, and we need to mirror that, you know, it's not personal. Let bygones be bygones. At the end of the day, someone could not like a decision I've made at 1 p.m. and let me know that in an unsavory way. And by 1:30, they can be in my office asking or saying they need help. And it is my job, it is our job as leaders of the college and as a college community to do that. We are in service. So once I believe you start mirroring that so that people understand, as long as we are doing things, which is another big part of communication, we're doing it within a civil way, that we as a community college cannot take things personally, and making sure that we're making decisions that are not based on just feelings, but actual data. And therefore we can back that up, not with how we feel about the person. So I think it's important for me to mirror that. I think it's important for me to encourage the executive team to mirror that. And then I think it's important that I present committees, I present meetings that allow or foster open communication, as long as we have the house rules of being civil, as long as we understand that we will be open to everyone's perspective. No perspective is irrelevant. No perspective can be dismissed based on hierarchical power or your title or what you do. All opinions actually matter, and all opinions should be and will be fostered and accepted because they will be done in a civil way. Once you can get past that, and I am the one who mirrors that, I think the communication begins to grow, because communication comes through trust, and trust comes through setting the guidelines, communicating them, and following them.
Okay. How would you help us to attract new students and increase enrollment at the college's numerous and diverse sites where programs and services are delivered?
So a big part of that is, I think they're twofold. I think that one of the things that you all have done that I think is just remarkable is the idea that you have branched out and basically said, we have a certain population of students, these being the incarcerated students, these are potential students, and we will create programming directly towards them. The other part of it, I think, that is vital is that when you look at the economic growth in your area, the potential economic growth, although the population is projected to get a little older over the next few years, but definitely the idea of there being more retail, the idea of there being more, housing for people who are getting up in age, all of those things that you all have already done lets me know that the college is in and of itself is ready and viable for any sort of data or any sort of plan that says this is where our community is actually going. These are the needs of our community, and we need to foster that and create programming around that. The mere fact that those things have already been done lets me know that the college is open to that. So the way I would look at it is, I would look at it because, again, I feel like everything is back at zero a little bit than it was 6 months ago as a result of COVID. Please do, I don't want to not stress that enough, is that things will shift again. And what the strategic plan and the educational master plan might have been a year or two ago will drastically shift, because the needs of the community are going to shift more towards medical, of course, more towards industry in a different sort of way. And so for me, it's our idea of how do we get on the cutting edge of that and understanding where the landscape of the geographic area is actually going. And then what programs we already have and what programs we can initiate within a budgetary responsible way. Let me say that. It has to be budgetarily responsible, because we might not see the residual effects for 3 to 5 years. So for me, it's understanding exactly that you all are already open to new and innovative things, and also looking at where the statistics of where the community is already going with some things I've already seen, but more so now as a result of COVID. And so I now know, or I know I can massage and help carry the college forward, as long as we're doing it with data-driven decisions, we're communicating, and people understand the short and long-term effects. So that is how I would go about doing it. I would also introduce, or I would really want to get feedback from the community leaders in our community in and of itself, from everything, of course, from the local community networks and things like that, to understand what are some of the industries that are actually being brought to that particular community or brought to the community, and where we see that not just going for that community, but what that will bridge off into. So for me, it's getting this feedback, understanding the data we already have, looking at national trends, and also, like I said, already have a culture of innovative ideas. So I don't foresee it being a difficult transition at all. It's just making sure that we identify where we want to go in the next 3 to 5 years, and pivoting towards that wholeheartedly with our financial decision-making and our strategic decision-making. And those are the things, to me, that will get enrollment up. At the end of the day, people want to make sure that, one, even though I know we have a large transition to 4-year institutions, but people also want to make sure right now that there will be work at the end of them gaining a certificate and or leaving a 4-year college after they're done with us. Those are the main pillars under which I think we will get new students. And then finally, the last pillar, which I've kind of said in the previous, is that we really need to deal with that K through 12 population, especially now that AB 705 is there. There are going to be setbacks from what we know to be them working or going to school at home. And how are we going to make that transition? Because it's projected that a lot of people will not go to college and will drop out as a result of this. So to me, it's how do we foster that, bridge that gap, and attract students to let them know we are here to help you. We are here to facilitate that. Don't get intimidated by this new mode of education, because we're educators and we can change the mold if we had to be palatable for you to succeed.
Okay. Andrea, how would your experience inform the ways you would cultivate buy-in from all constituent groups in developing and implementing a guided pathways program across the college's expansive service areas?
So guided pathway is my favorite, which always put things that we were sort of already doing as a California community college into one umbrella. It basically gave it pillars that we could say, okay, these are the services we're doing that fits into staying on the path and getting on the path. But these were already services we were doing, but it made it more palatable, which makes sense, and put it more into a collective so that we could really hit at it. So for me, I know that it's been a transition overall for the community colleges to say, why do we need guided pathways, or is it really effective? How is it doing anything different than we did prior? And it has been issues with constituency groups and their buy-in to it in certain respects. So for me, it's all about the results. At the end of the day, people in the community college system want the students to succeed. It doesn't matter the constituency group or the person. Everybody wants the students to do well. So the data regarding it doesn't lie. Now, do we necessarily think it needed to be in that framework? Not necessarily, but I truly believe that when you bring forward what we have done when it comes to guided pathways and see the success of it, that is how you actually bring people together, because at the end of the day, we're trying to service students. Students is the focus. The constituency groups are the channel under which we get to that student success, and that's what they want, and we want that. But to me, it's showing the success of the work you all have already done to propel it forward, because like I said, I'm a transformational leader. I want to see the transformation, and I want you all to see the transformation of what has happened just based on what you've done. If you look at which I'm sure you have, when you look at how your graduation rate, your transfer to four-year colleges, you all are already doing these great things. And sometimes we need to celebrate that more and highlight that more to say, yes, we're packaging it in a guided pathways framework, but you all have already been doing this. You've been doing it a while, and this is the success as a result of that. How do we take that further? How do we get more successful? And that is how I would bring people together, based on the success that we've already had and based on the lessons learned. So I'm big into reflection. I'm big into making sure we understand how we've already succeeded, to understand how to propel people forward, how to get people on the same page, and how to get people to come to a consensus. They might not always agree, but they can come to a consensus. And I think that's the way I have governed things from all of the committees I've been on and all of the things that I have put forward at my current college and then when I was in Chicago. And I really believe that is the way to go, because I've had success in doing it and trust, and I trust that. I think you're on mute again, Lisa. You might have clicked it double. You didn't get off mute.
There, got it. What is your plan to support our employees embracing equity, diversity, and inclusion?
My plan for that is that it is something that is near and dear to my heart as I'm finishing my dissertation, which I'm happy to say will be published by the end of the year. But my plan for that is that people understand exactly what, not that they don't, but just more so what diversity and inclusion includes. And I think sometimes we believe if we check a box or if we actually retain students, or recruit students and they check a certain demographic, that is indeed inclusion and diversity, and it's not. It's actually dealing with the diversity of thought and the collection of ideas, so that the social norms or the traditional norms of the college campus, based on who we hire, how we retain them, are we open to different diverse ways of thinking? And I understand academic freedom comes into that, and I think that people don't understand that those things actually work together. And so it's understanding for me how diversity fits in diversity and inclusion fits in every element of what we do. Are we choosing the best vendors? Are we choosing the vendors that really identify with our student body? Are we choosing the vendors that identify with our employees? Are we choosing practices? Are we continuing to go with certain norms that actually exclude other people? And are we even thinking about that when we do it? We have the best of intentions, but are we thinking about that? So my plan is, like I said, with the professional development, is to start bringing in thoughts. And if the idea is that no one training, no one professional development will ever change something it took someone 30 or 40 years to do. The point is to start making people think about things differently and see things from a different lens. It's not to change necessarily someone in an instant, but understand what are the opportunities I have within my classroom? What opportunities do I have when someone comes into my area as a classified person just to talk to that student? What are the areas even within the custodial team in which we have to think about, are we shaping and are we doing things to include everyone? From ableism, we're talking about ageism, we're talking about class, we're talking about race, we're talking about gender, we're talking about sexual identity. All of those things are a part of diversity. It's never just race, it's never just ethnicity. All of those things, and we can all do something. And so my plan is to look at all of these areas, to go through with people. It takes time to do that, but look at all these areas and say, what are the opportunities that we're missing? That when we decide how high to hang that paper towel holder is, even though it's ADA compliant, is it really the best thing to do it that way? Are we thinking about that? Are we thinking about how it's easier for us, because we have gone to college and we have finished as faculty members, for us to go up to a faculty member and say, hey, I need help, or hey, I do. But someone who's a first generation college student who doesn't have that cultural capital and their parent didn't go to college, they can't inform them. So they don't feel they don't have the self-efficacy to walk up to an administrator or walk up to even a faculty member after class and say, hey, I'm struggling. Because we always find that people who go to tutoring are always the students who are already at a B trying to get an A, but the students who are the C and D never go. And I think it's because sometimes we miss the mark in education, and understanding that's where the diversity comes in. Are we making an environment so that someone who does not feel they don't have enough self-efficacy, are they still able to come to us and say, hey, I need help? And maybe they're not going to come up to us. Maybe they need it in a form. Maybe they need it in a tweet. How are we individually changing how we do or adjusting how we do it so that at least every year we're making ourselves more palatable for those students and those employees to come to us? And so that's my plan.
Let me say, share with us the most successful example of leading external collaboration, in effect, beyond your campus boundaries. What process did you use? What was the outcome?
So a big part of one of the projects I was working on, and still currently working on it at my current location or current college, is we have a college campus, Evergreen Valley College, which I'm the Vice President of Administrative Services there, and we have a barn project. Right adjacent to our particular college, we have what is called the 27 acres, and it's 27 acres of open land that is actually owned by our district. The thing about it is because we're located in San Jose, there is a housing shortage, of course, for economic reasons. And so we have a situation where we're trying to indeed attract and draw students there. And at the same time, we're a situation where we're trying to attract and draw faculty there and classified, but there's this high housing cost. So nevertheless, the community, although they really, really have always supported the college, are not in favor of any sort of housing, not even residential housing for people older in age. They just don't want it. And so as a result of that, because those were some of the ideas when it was brought forward, we had a big sort of community sort of uproar when we were trying to sell or lease that land. And so for me, externally, what it did was it created obstacles for other things we were trying to do in the community, because we would go out and we would recruit, or we would talk to just other community partners about things we wanted to do as a college, bring scholarships, when we wanted to bring pipelines for Tesla, when we wanted to do other things for work. Every community person or every community member always went back to this notion of this 27 acres, which was an issue. So it was something that I had to basically, along with the college president at the time and several others, really shift through when it came to how do we facilitate the conversation and make sure people know we have this issue over here with the 27 acres, but the college is also doing great things. So don't miss that opportunity. So the ability to communicate, the ability to take this task, which was monumental within the community, and still not make it have a stopper for other things we want to do, was actually not the easiest thing, but I'm glad I was a part of it, because we were able, and still to this day, having those communications with the community and understanding that, hey, this is this, and this is what we're looking at over here, but we're still doing great things. So we were able to bring the Tesla program. We were able to bring the nursing program, in which we got San Jose and Kaiser Permanente to come in. And we were also able to offer very, very good workforce job opportunities to our students within the community and even get scholarships. But we had to go through that because they were looking at us just as the nuances of the 27 acres and putting those together. And so even though we had great programming, we had to get over that. We had to explain it time and time and time again. And that was something I was actually very proud of when it came to understanding how to deal with a third party when something that's beyond you is affecting the ability to move the college forward. I think you're on mute again, Lisa.
There's several questions regarding athletics that were submitted as it relates to the student-centered funding formula, metrics, equity, and student development. How would you show your support for Coyote athletics and other student activities?
I think it's a interesting thing about sports, but we won't relate it to COVID right now. But I think that I would show it because at the end of the day, the data, again, data-driven decisions, show that people who are within college athletics have a higher percentage of completion, retention, and actually graduating. So it's one of those things in which we are investing in athletics early in the community college student's life. And the idea that they will persist exponentially grows as a result of being a part of that athletic program. Because of the nuances and the confines or the constraints and the limitations and the support they get while being in such a program. So as a result of that, our numbers will indeed go up. That actually informs directly to the funding formula, the ability for students to persist, the ability for the graduation rates to increase. Those are data-driven decisions that are in direct correlation, because at the end of the day, as I always say, if we want to use data to substantiate the need for AB 705, we can use that same data to say, if we start these things early through the athletic programs, this is the result for our students, which directly ties into vision for success, which directly ties into guided pathways, and which directly ties into our ability to get money or additional money from the funding formula because of completion rates, graduation, and of course, certificates. It directly ties. It's not immediate, but it's the same actually data that was used to say, hey, AB 705 is where we need to go. So I think it's understanding how to make those decisions, how to actually communicate that to the larger district and even to the state chancellor's office. We won't be the first to have that conversation with Lizette and everyone else about the funding formula because of athletics. This isn't the first. We just will be joining that group and having that data there to show it. I think you're on mute again, Lisa, sorry.
There. How will you support the creation of new academic programs to expand the college's course offerings and services to our communities?
So for me, I think that's a big part of the changing educational landscape. And I think that's where forward thinking always comes in. I always believe that we should be looking at enhancing or increasing college curriculum. So for me, it's never an idea, and I get this a lot, and I know that there are a lot of faculty on the line, and I do appreciate you and love you. And there are a lot of faculty who love to say, well, the students say they want this, they say they need this, and I think it would be great. And I agree. I just always want to make sure that we are making data-informed decisions. And so when I look at curriculum, I look at trends, meaning is this something that will be able to be transferred for the students to go to the four-year college, or two, certificate as far as being able to enter the workforce. Those are the things, and basically how innovative it is. Does it indeed get at a population or a gap we have, or an equity gap we have? How does this directly tie in to help facilitate the learning or the progression of education? So for me, it's never about, because I believe all programs are important and all curriculum is important, but the curriculum development to me, in my opinion, and how I really want to lead and guide, is that we are always, again, forward thinking and looking at how does the curriculum address one, or if not three of those areas. One, will this help the students transfer? Two, will this help them gain a certificate and gain employment? Or three, does this close or help close the equity gap? Those are the ways in which I want us to evaluate curriculum and what we bring forward. And there are always creative ways to do it. It might not be a direct link, it might be an indirect link, i.e. what we just talked about with athletics. That's an indirect link, but it directly links to the funding formula. And I'm happy, and that's the way I have always governed, and how I think do things right now as a fiduciary arm, is to get creative and understand how one impacts the other. So for me, it's always, let's build new curriculum, but let's keep our eye on the prize, and that this is what curriculum is supposed to do for our students. And if we can show that, and it can do that, I'm always in support of it, and in support of how, and in support of it with the Vice President of Administrative Services. How can we make that a reality? And when can we make that a reality? Sometimes we can do things, we are passing them, we want to do them, but we can't do them right now. It might be something we have to initiate 6 months to a year, depending on how, of course, it gets through the curriculum committee and academic senate and so forth. But those are the things that matter to me, that make me say, oh, we're in full support. If those things are not present, it will never be denied, but it will definitely be, go back and let's find a connection. I need you to go back and think about this, rethink about it, or think about it again, and bring that forth. We need to make sure those things are tied to new curriculum.
All right, this will be your last question, and then we'll give you your 5 minutes for your closing remarks. So if you were to encounter an academic program struggling to be led effectively, what would you do to enhance its growth, mitigate declining morale, protect the image of the college in the community, and hold those responsible for leadership that are accountable?
Funny you should ask that. We're actually going through something like that right now. I won't say the program, but that does happen. It happens with changing of the guard and changing of industry, and also just sometimes people get older and who are within a certain department, and they just aren't the innovative minds that they once were, not because they can't be, but just because things have gotten business as usual. So for me, if I found that to be the case, I would need to understand why. I'm a person who truly believes that things just don't happen because they happen. I would have to go back to the source and understand at what point did this program become ineffective? At what point was the leadership not effective, or what happened that caused this to happen? Sometimes it's based on a person. A person was leading it and they left, or they're not there, or they retired and it went awry. Or sometimes it's industry changes and we didn't pivot in time, and we didn't look at things, and we kept things business as usual. And so for me, it's all about collaboration and understanding, how do we not necessarily, I want to say, in using semantics, get rid of this program, but how do we pivot this program into something we're already doing, or pivot this program into something new that we need to do? So for me, it's always the idea of, first, I'm going to look at why this didn't succeed. Two, I'm going to look at the leadership we have and understanding, how do I coach them up to understand the needs of that department? And the only way to understand the needs is to understand the why, who's currently in there, and what are the gaps, or what are the barriers right now keeping this program from succeeding. If we do all of that and we still find that this program is just not one to succeed, that's when I would work with constituency groups And that does take some time, but at the end of the day, we're talking about data, we're talking about logic, and sometimes it takes more than one conversation, sometimes it takes 20 to understand where we need to go. But also I would always want to let people know the financial impact to those types of things. At the end of the day, the college does have a fiduciary responsibility to our students and even to the state and our community. And so it's the idea of we have a dead program or a program that's not doing well at this point, and this is the funds we are shifting into it. These are the funds or the opportunities that we're not utilizing. Is that the way the college, is that the way we want to go? I would say no, but also I want to give the floor to other people to make their arguments so that we can converse and really have that kind of conversation. But it's never just to slash something, but to make data-informed decisions based on the criteria I gave and help people understand if we continue with this program, these are the things that we won't be able to do. Are we okay with that? Because that's the question that's in the nation right now. Should students go online knowing we're going to lose all of this knowledge, or they're going to lose all of this knowledge in the next year? And are we okay with the implications of that or not? And that's why every day the news changes, because it's the overall question. We can make any decision we want to get rid of anything or keep it going, but they're lasting impacts. And that is what I would want people to understand. Ultimately, as a leader, I would have to make the decision. But if we could not come to a consensus without that, or before I had to do that, then I would have to make the decision. But I would want to put all the information out there. I would want to absorb all the information so that we are making a data-informed decision, and so that people understand not just the decision I would have to make, but why I made it. And I can live with the results of that, although I would always want to live with, of course, collaboration. But I really think it's important that people understand why you're making the decisions you're making, so that it doesn't seem like it's top down, that we are really doing this for the betterment of our students and to enhance other programs. That's how I would approach it. And that is the open communication I would have and want to facilitate in either continuing on with the program and shifting it, or if we had to redirect those dollars and those resources somewhere else.
Okay, Andrea, you have now 5 minutes to make your closing statement.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say thank you, Lisa, and to the HR department for facilitating this. I know it's not easy, especially online. I do want to thank everyone, although I cannot see you, you can see me, who is participating in this. I know this is not an easy thing to do or decide or to give your feedback online, because you can't touch, feel, and taste me right now in a room, but I do want to thank you for your time, which shows the commitment that all of you all have for the next college president. I do want to say, yes, I am a transformational leader. Yes, I'm a Socratic method thinker. Yes, I come from Chicago, the great city that gets a lot of national news right now. But I do want to say also what is important, or that I want you all to take away from this, is that I am a leader who is very committed to diversity. I'm a leader who's very committed to the success of the community college system, specifically here in California, because I now call this my home and my mother loves it. So I'm not going to be moving anywhere else but California, and say that I've always been committed to my passion. I didn't think that passion would lead me to higher education, but it did, and I'm glad it did. It was the only thing that ever felt right to me. I do believe this is the natural progression in my career, and I'm looking to actually lead a college to be the best it can be. I think there's so many opportunities at this particular college, especially with the vast area you serve and all the programs you already have with incarcerated students, dual enrollment. You already have a booming online presence as far as distance education. And I know that right now, with everything going on, you want a leader who is very diverse in their ability to see things from multiple angles. And that is what I bring. Yes, I have a finance background. Yes, I have an operational background, but I'm also a person who understands student service and instruction. As someone who's now actually getting to the adjunct work myself here in California, I was in Chicago already, but I understand things from a multitude of perspectives. And at this point in the college's history, in our nation's history, I cannot implore you enough the need to have a leader, whether it's me, I prefer it be me, or someone else, who understands the dynamics of how all of these things play together, especially within the next 18 to 24 months. Please, please, please do not lose sight of that And I believe that I am that leader who can give you that diversity of thought, who can guide you through the strategic initiatives I know that the college wants to go to and where we need to go from the different information I have gotten online and from the interviews I have done. And so I just want to say, I want to be there. I want you to want me though, at the same time, because this has to be a cultural fit. And so that is important, that I'm going to a place that can appreciate what I have to bring. And I've already put my cards on the table and let you know I'm interested in you, but I also want to make sure that you are interested in me as well. And if I know that, I know that we can make this work. And I know that I would be a great president to lead you in this next phase of the college's long trajectory.
Thank you, Andrea, very much for your time, and we appreciate all your answers to the various questions that the community has provided. Audience, again, let me remind you to go to the Saracosa College website so that you can go ahead and provide us with your input for each of the candidates who will be at the forums tonight. And Andrea, again, the best to you. Please stay safe and stay healthy.
Same to you, Lisa. Thank you for facilitating. Thank you.
You're welcome.